Okay, we are live. Wow. Okay. I feel like I always want to have some kind of intro for these things whenever I do them, and I never think about it beforehand. I just kind of go. Everything I do is just off the cuff. I don't rehearse. I don't edit. I don't do anything. But I'm almost at a loss for words on this one because anybody who's watched my last couple videos will know just how speechless this amazing person has made me recently. Um, I'm here with Janny Wurts. This is such an exciting opportunity to talk to you. I've come to so greatly respect your work, but also just you as a person for watching interviews and things like that. So, like I told you before we started the live, thank you so much for taking the time, and I can't wait to talk to you here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. We are not at Dragonsteel
We are not.
because we're not going to steal their thunder. We got our own little lightning in a bottle right here. So I'm thrilled.
Exactly.
Jake, I just found your channel about a month, 6 weeks ago, and I'm
Something
so
like that.
impressed.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going up like a
Thank you.
rocket, and it's wonderful to see.
I guess. Yeah. It's. I have a lot to be grateful for from other people in the community who have really welcomed me and help give me shout outs on their bigger channels and things like that. That's been great. This community is just unbelievable. I know one of the first times I heard your name was from John, a Talking Story, and he talks all the time about how amazing the community is and just how it's changed his life and all these things. And he's right. You know,
He's right.
it's absolutely like that.
He's right. Betty Ballantyne, who is the wife of Ian Ballantyne, who is responsible for bringing Tolkien to mass market and really expanding that. Oh, yeah, that's a story. That's a whole
Okay.
story in itself. Always used to say his favorite place and her favorite place to go was conventions for fantasy and science fiction because the most
Yeah.
intelligent, most kind, most wonderful people attended. So I think it's the
Yeah.
epics of humanity. Honest to gosh.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Um, yeah, a lot of people. Yeah, solidarity for non-Dragonsteel. Exactly. Yeah, that's how Dragonsteel looks great. You know, as I do, I kick myself a little bit for not making it this year because the Stormlight Archive is one of my favorite things ever, and it's such a monumental book release for him with this time that it would have been cool to be there. But what are you gonna do? I get to talk to Janny Wurts instead, so even better. Um, I'm sure we'll touch on some of your other books and a lot of love for Hell's Chasm and for Wars of Light and Shadow and all this, but all of your books are now on my list. So
Wow.
I'm excited to get to everything. We just got to make the time. But something tells me it's going to be easy to bump some of those up compared to some of the other things on the list. So
Well, that's thrilling to hear. Yeah, if you like audiobooks, we've got some pretty thrilling narrators. I got Simon Preble
awesome.
for Master of Whitestorm, and he did Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and he did
Oh yeah,
Narnia, and he did Shackleton. Really big name in audio, and he was my first pick, and he knocked it out of the park for that
that's
book.
amazing.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
it was like a fan moment for me to get him as a
That's
narrator, and
so
then
cool.
listen to him render the story. I'm like, whoa, this was cool.
Yeah. What is that? Can you talk about that more? Like, what's that like to have this piece of art that you've created that you then like have somebody else sort of make art with it, right? I think that performance is very much art.
I'm really a nitpicker for language. I grew up and I read the library, and so I really like precision in the prose and getting a narrator that doesn't overperform it, that's going to let the beauty and the rhythm and the beat, the prose is almost musically set up in my
Yeah.
sentences. So I
Yes.
wanted a narrator who could deliver that without detracting from it. And so I listened to a lot of them. And when the audio rights came into play, the first thing I did was ask everybody, who's your favorite narrator? And I listened to many, many, many. Simon Preble was always one of my top on my list.
Yeah.
So then I would send suggestions to the audiobook company and say, here's who I'd like to have. And sometimes you strike gold. That person is available and they can hire them. If they
Mm-hmm.
don't, what I discovered was they take your recommendations very seriously.
Yeah.
And they presented me another list to pick from. And that's how I got Colin Mace for Wars of Light and Shadows. And Colin is just perfect for it. He's brilliant. He's brilliant. I couldn't have done better. Here's a guy who does nature documentaries. He's got a beautiful, beautiful voice,
Nice.
and it's a very
Yeah.
measured delivery. So that's how I got my wish, and that's how I also got better than my wish on some of these performances, because it's really a collaboration in the long run, because whoever does the narration is going to bring a quality to that story that may
Yeah.
be different than what I envisioned, but you don't want it to be too
Sure.
widely different.
Right. Exactly. I guess on that note, Andrew was asking if there's any news on if he's going to continue.
I would absolutely scream and blow the roof off if we got the chance to have it done. It's all up to the publisher. They have the audio rights. They are holding them with a very tight fist. So the only thing we can do is build awareness of the series and build awareness that there's demand. And I'm
Yeah.
trying my best. I've been battling for this for years,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely for years, because the books were designed to be read aloud. All of them
Okay.
were. My prose style, I hear it as I write it, not only choosing the precision of the words, but also the precision of the sound and the
Yeah.
beat and the alliteration. All that stuff is part of it. So they were made for audio. And I
That's
just have to
wow.
break the barrier because I had too many editor changes and just not enough solid one person batting on my team to really
Mm.
make a difference. So in a way, this series has kind of swum under the radar because of
Yeah.
that. And you guys are changing that equation. What it's going to
Trying.
take to kick it over the brink, I don't know. But I had a terrible decision to make after Peril's Gate was done and I did Hell's Chasm. The last 5 books in the series were not under contract. And in
Yeah.
2000, yeah, 2008, the whole world economy crashed.
Uh-huh.
Hell's Chasm went on the market right after 9/11. Publishers stopped buying for 2 years. So it was a very hard period to get a new deal cut. So
Mm-hmm.
in order to get the finish of the series onto a contract, I had to work with Great Britain and I had to give them some rights that I probably didn't want to part with. And
Sure.
audiobooks and e-rights went at that time because that's the only way I could get the finish in sight. And to put it
Yeah.
bluntly, the work that went into producing any of those Word of Light and Shadow books was so intense.
I can
I
imagine.
really wanted a signed contract to give me an incentive to keep going.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Uh,
That's very understandable, and hopefully, I mean, like the wave is building, right? Like I think that so many people have become aware of your books now, thanks to just people on, including myself, right? Just thanks to other people on YouTube talking about it, and it makes me think about. I'm a big fan of the Sun Eater series by Christopher Rocchio. That kind of had a similar thing. The series was kind of it wasn't selling. It was having a really hard time, and then it got picked up by some people on YouTube, and all of a sudden, it he has dedicated book 6 to a YouTuber and said, "You
that's
saved
right.
the series."
You have.
So
You
I'm
guys have.
hopefully it's that.
Honestly, you guys have because the most important thing for any original work that isn't cookie cutter or doesn't fit into a neat little spot in the genre is targeting the correct audience.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very hard to do when it's a giant publisher that's so busy just doing a book a month. They do
Yeah.
their list and then it's over. Computer tracking, if it doesn't sell immediately, it's over. So discovering something as intricate as Wars of Light and Shadow, where all the books are equivalent to 3 novels somebody
Uh
else is
huh.
writing today, it's going to take a couple years for some readers to finish it. So to
Of
get the
course.
whole
Yeah.
picture out there at the time of the release, when the thing has been hidden from view, not on bookstore shelves for so long, I owe everything to you guys. The fact that I'm appreciating the impact of it now, because I was working in the dark, literally working in the
Yeah.
dark, because I said I'm not going to leave this huge project that I dreamed up for my whole lifetime unfinished. It's just not
Yeah.
happening. So
Yeah.
getting it to the right readers, there's nobody better than YouTubers to do that because you're doing
Yeah.
it for the love. The enthusiasm is genuine. You bring a smarts to it that a picture ad or a little thing that's stuffed on social media with the title of the book, set there
Sure.
on a pretty table with a couple of, that's not going to sell the book. What's going to sell
Right.
the book is word of mouth, and YouTube is word of mouth.
It is indeed.
So I will do everything in my power to support you guys in what you
Thank you
do
so much. Yeah, and
because
and I think I I can speak for all of us here who have discovered your books that we are so grateful that you stuck with it and finished it. And I haven't even started Curse of the Mistwraith yet, but it's so funny. I already, just from reading The Gallant and Hell's Chasm, I already know it's going to be one of my favorite things of all time. Like, there's no question in my mind. And the idea that, like, what if I would have gotten to that tipping point halfway through the series and it just wasn't finished? That'd be so heartbreaking. So I'm so, thank you so much for finishing it and giving us this, just this massive piece of art, but piece of yourself, right? I think it's such an intimate thing to put something out in the world that way.
I set out to do something when I was 18 years old, and I spent 50 years developing it. The
Yeah.
public only saw it 30 years ago, because that's when
Yeah.
the first book was sold as a finish. But there was unseen work behind the scenes for 20 years before that first book came out. So that's why
Yeah.
I never lost control of it. But it's very deep. It's very slow burn. Be patient with it. It will absolutely blow your mind and deliver. And there's no way I wasn't going to finish it. I was going to do whatever I
Yeah.
had to do, hell or high water, including that crazy deal.
Yeah. Okay, so I need to bring this up because what you just said there, and what I get from watching other interviews and videos that you've been a part of, you have such a strength of will and such a confidence in yourself and such a, like, yeah, I did this amazing thing and you're gonna love it because it's great. Like, and you own that, and I love that so much. I think some people are scared to do that. They're scared to come off as arrogant. They're scared to, anything like that. But I think that we mentioned this a little bit earlier. I think it might have been off air, but just how much you've done in your life, and I think that is undoubtedly shaped you into the person who had the ability to persevere through that stuff and finish this incredible thing.
I did
I don't really
Outward
have a
Bound.
question. I just think it's
I did
cool.
Outward Bound at 17.
I heard you
Where
talk
you're
about that. Yeah,
thrown into,
yeah,
literally, you learn this and you survive, or you go down, and you
yeah,
take the people with you. You learn this skill and you're asked to put it to use, and you have somebody else's life in your hands. It makes your life real very, very fast. And
I'm
you
sure.
don't see the great people who write things that are monumental running around apologizing for it. You don't hear Robin
Right.
Hobb apologizing for her books. You don't hear Brandon Sanderson apologizing. You certainly didn't
Mm-hmm.
hear Tolkien apologizing for his work.
Yeah.
It's a misnomer in this society that being too humble and denigrating yourself gets you anywhere. It would be like me knocking on your door as a traveling salesman saying, I got this wonderful hammer. It's worth $10, but would you please pay $1.50 for it? No,
No.
no. Your life is unique. There is no other person can tell the story you can live the life for you. You're the only one that can make that choice. And to do
Yeah.
that, you have to deafen yourself to the naysayers who already gave up their dreams.
Yeah.
So I would say it isn't confident. I have my moments where I think I'm an idiot. It's like everyone else. I have my moments where I'm definitely an idiot, okay? But I can own what I created
Yeah.
because no one else could do that. And so you don't gain any favors by standing behind self-pity and asking the world to believe you because maybe the world's got to endorse your work first. No, you endorse your work, and the naysayers can naysay all they want and let them bray in their corner because you don't have to listen. And it's not easy to maintain that attitude sometimes when life gets you down,
Yeah.
or you get a rejection, or you get things hit you sideways, or somebody says something to you that really hurts you and cuts deep. But in the end, that doesn't matter. What matters is what you make of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
not what they try to tear you down to their level or whatever. So I just don't buy crab in the bucket.
Yeah.
Crab in the bucket to
Amen.
me, I'll step on them, you know?
Yeah. Man, we could end this stream right now. Like, that was just such an incredible. We need to. I'm with Will here. We need to put this on a poster or a T-shirt or something. Um, that was amazing, and I think that sentiment is it's one of the things that I think has drawn me to you and your work so strongly. Like, I find myself, I enjoy all kinds of stories, right? Like, I can have the super fun, frivolous, whatever.
Oh,
I
yeah.
can have the
Oh,
really
yeah.
deep, whatever. All of it's great, but I think what sticks with me the most is always the stories that challenge me and also come from people who I come to respect how they conduct themselves in life, right? And I think that, at least so far, you've checked all those boxes, but I have no reason to doubt that that won't continue. Yeah,
Well, there's a sincerity to a person, and you can tell if they're wearing a mask and they're not real.
for sure.
And I just don't have time for people who are not real. So I grew up in a
100%.
family of 5 kids. We all had massively different interests. My parents worked very, very hard. They didn't have time to pay attention to everything we did at all. They didn't attend our little stuff in high school. They didn't,
Mm,
I'm lucky if they came to a college graduation for 5 minutes. But one thing that upbringing taught me was you want something, you brawl for it.
yeah,
You
yeah,
fight for it because you have 6 siblings trying to take it away or 5 siblings trying to take it away from you. It's like you learn to defend your space. You're not the chosen one in a family that size.
yeah.
You're more likely to be the guy on the bottom of the heap trying not to have your brother practice wrestling on you, when you go home. So I grew up to be a bit of a maverick and a bit of a brawler and a bit of a being an introvert. I like to go off
Yeah.
by myself and I read a lot of books.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
went off in the
Me.
woods by myself and did stuff. So
You did a lot of stuff.
I did a lot of stuff.
I think maybe for some people who aren't as familiar, do you want to maybe like just rattle off some of the 152 different things that you've done in your life that are going to blow people's minds?
When I was growing up, I was really lucky to have a dad who was exceptional. And he could not provide everything that we wanted as kids. But the one thing he taught us was if you want something badly enough, show us a way to do it responsibly. And we'll
Mm,
say, okay. So I wanted a horse. I really, really, really wanted to ride horses, and we couldn't afford to
hmm.
do that stuff. He was saving for our college, and he
Yeah.
succeeded. He put us all through college. But if I could earn the money, if I could show that I could be responsible about taking care of that horse, if I could show that I had a bank account set aside from doing every kind of odd job or babysitting or whatever I had to do to pay for the vet bills, to pay for the shoeing, to pay for whatever, he'd throw a fence up in the backyard and bang together a shed
Yeah.
with a stall in it and let us keep a horse. So that taught me pretty early what it takes to survive in life because it's the same thing keeping a horse as keeping yourself.
Mm,
So there's where I was lucky in my parents. The way they handled it was they said, if you show us a way you can do it, do it. When it
yeah.
came time to go to college, I sold the horse and I sent myself to Outward Bound because somebody came to do a lecture on it. And I said, well, that looks kind of cool. It's like bare raw bone survival, but it was so much more than that.
Yeah.
And at that time also, I was writing stories in pencil and notebooks and they were terrible. They all need to be burned. But I wanted to write and I realized from the get-go my ideas were way, way, way bigger than my life experience.
Mm,
So I set off to get life experience. So it began with Outward Bound. Then it went to saving up the money and going to Europe for the summer
hmm.
and banging around and seeing Switzerland and seeing Scotland, England, France, going to some of the major museums. Then it moved into offshore sailing. There were certain things I had to check off some boxes in order to write what I wanted to write. And I wanted
I
the
love this. I
hands-on,
love this
yeah,
so
I
much.
wanted the hands-on experience.
Yeah.
So I went offshore sailing and I crewed on boats offshore from here to there. I
Yeah.
went to Africa. I went to Russia. I went to as many places as I could get on a shoestring.
Yeah.
I saw a total eclipse of the sun just because. And all on a shoestring. I think I came back from seeing the total eclipse of the sun. I went on a cruise ship. I stayed in the very bottom level, 15 levels down below the waterline, where you shared with 6 people and you had a bathroom with 14, sharing with 14, and everybody was getting seasick except me. But I came back from that with a dime in my pocket to call my parents from the dock to pick me up.
Yeah.
So you have a kind of brash courage at that age.
Yeah. I love
And
it.
I just went to the max. So yeah, I was
Yeah.
riding horses at that time. I was doing working student at a stable, living away from home in high school at summer, learning from Olympic riders, off on my own. So once a week, my parents would pick me up. I'd come home. I'd do my wash. I'd buy about a week's worth of peanut butter and jelly, and go back to the barn for the next 7 days.
Yeah.
So, there's nothing you can't do, but you kind of got to throw off everybody's idea of take your marble and roll it down the chute because we did it and we gave up our dreams. Don't.
Right.
You don't have to.
I'll have to. Yeah, that's amazing. I relate to it on a smaller scale, but to the degree that I can relate, for me, I grew up in the Midwest in Illinois, and I wanted to go to grad school. Like I had this dream, I wanted to do this. I essentially do online personal training is like my main gig, and there's a lot of educational component. I wanted to talk about research and be like a science communicator and things like that. And I wanted to work for myself, entrepreneur, all this. And, there's no path to do that, right? You have to make it up as you go. And I was like, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to learn how to do it right. I'm going to do it. And I moved across the entire country to a state that I didn't want to live in. And I told myself, I will live in this lab if I need to. I'll be here for 16 hours a day if I need to. I'll eat, whatever I can get my hands on. I'll be dirt poor, whatever. But it's that journey. I think it shapes you so strongly, and you get so many things that most people aren't going to get, because they don't. I think, this could be certainly not right for everybody, but I think that some people deep down almost feel like they don't deserve it, or feel like they're not worthy of their dream.
Yeah, you're told that. You're told that from when you're small. Sorry, you're a little kid. Get out of the way because whatever's going on in the house is more important than you. You're taught that from the cradle. But at some point you have to be an adult and stand up and say, now I get to make my choices. But you're mentioning, I mean, you do bodybuilding and you do all this other stuff too, and you read books and you think very deeply about what you read because I've watched your channel and I listen to what you said.
Yeah.
And you've got this PhD program going. You're one of those people that dug in and said, I'm going to dig in and take this. I'll tell you, I realized very quickly when I got out of school, if I didn't dig in and do what I was going to do for life right now, if I went and got a corporate job or it was over because I would become too accustomed to the income, too accustomed to the daily routine. I would burn up all of my fresh ideas for somebody else.
Yes.
So I lived in a field hands apartment on 200-year-old farm, stone farmhouse, main house. Mine was wood. Lived in the field hands quarters where the toilet froze every night. Where sometimes all I had to eat that week was cucumbers, graham crackers, and whatever eggs I could get from the landlord because he had chickens running loose. Seriously, I was getting up at 6 a.m. to muck stalls to make just barely enough money to hit the groceries. I'd panic whether I could pay the oil bill to keep the heat on in the winter. And I would shut down the hot water all summer long so I wasn't keeping that oil burner running. Wired a special switch so I didn't have to go down in the freezing cold garage to turn on the hot water. So, chasing your dreams from a young age like that, it has a price. You can't conform. You can't conform to society. You can't conform to what everybody else expects. And I also wanted to illustrate, and that was 2 full-time jobs. Massively 2 full-time jobs. So here I was, 35, and I was still single. Why? Because I hadn't had time for social life.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I can relate to that.
And it didn't hurt me at all. Now I have a dream marriage. Don Mace was perfect. Yeah, but you take things in a different order because that's the order you have to take them. Other things have to take precedence. So is your dream strong enough to take the pressure from without? Strong enough for your parents to say you're still living like a bohemian hooligan in this apartment that the toilet freezes in the winter. At 30 years old, when are you going to settle down? We want to retire and we're worried about you. And I'm like, don't worry about me.
Yeah.
I'm a survivor. You taught me how to survive. I'll be fine.
Yeah.
The social pressure around you to sand everything off and make you just like them.
Oh man,
it's
there's
intense.
So much.
Yep.
So much. I think about I'm in touch with almost nobody that I went to high school with. I think there's maybe two or three people that I'm in touch with at all.
Wow, that's 2 or 3 more than I am.
Yeah. But I don't know a single person who like chased their dream, a single person, and maybe their dream was to have the normal, you graduate, you go to college, you get a job, get married, get a dog, have a kid. Maybe that's their dream, and that's amazing. But like, I'm sure some of them had other dreams that they just didn't feel equipped or didn't feel, for whatever reason, they just didn't pursue. And it makes me sad. I think about how exciting the pursuit is so exciting. And you overlook the struggle because it feels so good to be moving towards this thing that you want. And every little milestone that you hit, every little ray of light that you get in that kind of dark tunnel is just like, this is it, man. Like, this is life I'm living. This is what it's all about.
Right.
And then I can't even imagine when you get to the destination and you finish your masterpiece or you whatever, like that has to just be so incredible, the feeling.
Well, it was a big sigh of relief because everybody's going saying, "Oh, don't do like Jordan did and die." I'm not even close. Not even close to that.
Yeah, we got a whole lot more stories to get.
But yeah, it was so massive. It was such a massive, massive project, and it will take you a place you have never gone, guaranteed. It's got many trappings of a classical fantasy at the start, and they're all going to get blown away and shredded. So you had a little peek of it in the Gallant.
Tiny peek.
Yeah, you had a peek of where it's going, and that will all unfold in the series too, but in a different way.
Okay.
So it's going to take you places, and that character will reappear too. He's got a pretty good role to play. So there's some fun stuff. But yeah, you devoted your life to that, and the old saw from my mother, "When are you ever going to finish it?"
Mm-hmm.
You're not finished it yet. So, you take it one step at a time and you will get there.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's I talk about that all the time. Like, I do a lot of one-on-one coaching with people for fitness stuff, right? And it's the same message, right? It's, you can't think about, oh, you want to lose 50 pounds. We can't do that, right? You can't, that's unfathomable, the amount of work and dedication and everything that takes. It's let's just handle today, right?
You
and
take the one step you
stack 'em
can
up.
do, one step you can do today.
Yep,
The
that's it.
one step you can do today. And even if it's 5 minutes before you fall asleep, you write one sentence.
Yes.
You do that one sentence. Or you wake up in the middle of the night, you keep that flashlight by the bed, and you write down that inspiration because it's not going to be there in the morning.
Yeah.
The muses are very stingy that way. They'll give you an idea once. And if you don't take it, if you don't grab a hold of it, it's gone. Life is like that. The doors will open, and if your ear isn't tuned to the ground as to what you want to listen for, it'll pass you by.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to live in a cocoon. I suppose it's like stepping out over air and expecting the foundation's going to be built by the time that foot comes down.
Sure.
But there's a reward to that kind of taking the chance, because look what you can achieve.
Yeah.
And look how you can grow as a person.
Yeah. Oh man, the journey in and of itself is, I don't have a word to describe how amazing just the journey is, let alone, the accomplishment and everything at the end, and the old cliche of like fortune favors the bold, right? Like, that cliche for a reason. It's exactly
There's
that.
something we've forgotten to value in the way that modern life has ground us down, and that is spontaneity.
Mm.
There is a certain pattern to being able to live your life where you can, if you're tired, you can take a nap. If you want to get up in the middle of the night, you get up in the middle of the night and work. If you want to take a day off, take a day off. If you see that book that you want to grab and read today, grab it and read it. In other words, take the impulses as they rise to the surface. But we get so wrapped up in the schedule or what we're supposed to do, or if I had an eraser and could get rid of one word in the English language, it would be should.
Mm.
And I would turn it to could.
Yeah.
Instead of I should do that, I could do that. Because could opens the door to what else you might want to do better.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So, but when you listen to people talk, they're so full of shoulds. They're just slamming doors over their own ears, left, right, and center. And I think we take our opportunities away from ourselves.
Yeah.
Because we don't say, I could do that.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, that becomes even harder and more constraining the deeper you go down that path, right? Of like, now you have a job and now you do have to show up for work at a certain time, and you can't just go take a nap or go work on your painting when you're in the middle of office hours, when you're on the phone with customers and stuff. It just becomes harder and harder, and even more reason to do what people like you did, from a young age. Just be like, no, I'm gonna go do that. I'm gonna chase that, and not let
Yeah,
myself get so locked down.
I kind of think I had to because I don't think I was very employable. I think I
I
would have got kicked out
could
for
see
saying
that.
saying the wrong word to the customer or
Uh-huh.
the wrong word to the boss or just plain not going to that meeting or
Yeah.
doodling in the margins instead of taking notes. I'm sorry, I can't wear a mask. It just never went well with me.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
matter how hard they tried to beat it into me to have manners around the company, it didn't work.
Yeah, none of that is surprising. That's awesome.
And how much
Um,
less it would work now.
yeah, yeah, I understand that for sure. Um,
So, break your expectations that people have of you. Break them all the time because if you can't keep reinventing yourself, you're not going to handle change well. And change is the one constant. You can count
yes.
on change.
Wow. The I love how you have a habit of dropping like a very profound sentence just without any preamble or anything like that. It's just amazing. Um, I love that. I would love to sort of piggybacking off what you were talking about there of like what you could do and following the muse and things like that. What is that? How is that kind of shaped for you in your career, both with writing and with art and with all these? Because you've done a lot of other things too. It's not just those. A lot of BookTube knows you for those things, but you've done other things as well, right? And I would love to know kind of what that, I don't know, sort of work flow, for lack of a better term, like how does that feel for you? How is that kind of shaped up as you have taken that more flexible, go with what I could do kind of approach? I think it's very different from what a lot of people are used to, right?
I get bored really, really easily.
Okay.
And when you get bored, what do? You look for something bigger. You either dig deeper into what you're already doing if you've hit the bottom, you think you've hit the bottom, and sometimes that means going sideways.
Hmm.
So, being a wilderness person, being a person that learned how to navigate offshore, being a person that likes adventure, I said, why not sign up for search and rescue? Because it puts a lot of the skills I've amassed into play. And
Hmm.
I can put that towards volunteering and helping somebody.
Yeah.
So often I will chase something simply because it's interesting and it's different. So a lot of things in the sciences, go ahead and try it for a couple of years. And
Hmm.
you're going to hit a wall because science builds walls around itself. There are many things that happen
Yep.
outside those walls that are just as valid and just as real, but they don't see them.
Yep.
So chase that for a while too. So, and mix with people who do interesting things. I guess I went to a college that wasn't conventional. We didn't have grades and we didn't have a structured class. Pretty much it was design your education, decide what you want to do, draw up a contract saying, I'm going to take this course, I'm going to read these books, I'm going to do this kind of community service, and I'm going to do that project that shows how I put it all together.
Yeah.
That was my education for college. I don't think I'd have survived a traditional college where you did 101, 102, 103.
Yeah. Yeah.
Throw
Yeah.
me in at 104, and if I don't like it or can't understand it, I'll read the other books in a week, catch
Sure.
up, and now I know if I want to stay there or not. But to do
Hmm.
4 years to figure out the
Yeah.
depth of the field you've chosen seemed unimaginably rigid. So
Hmm.
quickly, in the kind of education I had, I learned the knowledge that you want is out there. It's in a
Yeah.
book, it's in a field experience, it's in somebody's mind, it's in a museum. And so you don't need somebody to teach you anything. You just got to pursue where that knowledge lies and find it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're not taught
Absolutely.
that. We're taught check the little box
No.
on the standardized test. They've taken away that experimentation. They've removed the
Yeah.
arts and the music from schools. They've removed the creative element that delivers the inspiration, that delivers the desire, that delivers the dream. And one of the most shocking things that I figured out, I thought when I got done high school, it was so restricted. I hated it so bad. I hated school. I did not cry at my graduation. I
Yeah.
couldn't
I
get
was
out
the
of there
same.
fast enough.
Yeah.
When I went to college, that was an unstructured education except for making the contract for what I wanted to learn. I learned really quickly that you put 100% effort into those things you want to do.
Yes.
But when you're brought up in a school that's got a rigid program, you put only enough to survive.
Yes.
So you learn to
Exactly.
run at 3/4 capacity or half capacity or even 1/4 capacity all the time and just slip by, and most of your dreams slide out the drain with that 3/4 you're not using. So that taught me, that was like the revelation of the world. I really liked education actually, but let me take it in the direction I want to go. Don't
Yes.
tell me how to do it. Don't tell me what I'm supposed to be interested in. Don't tell me what I have to do first to get to the good stuff. Throw me in at the deep end, give me the good stuff, and I'll catch up the rest myself.
Yeah.
And if
Man.
we
Yeah.
could
That's.
turn education on its head like that,
Yeah.
we'd have much more self-sufficient, engaged people that wouldn't be running around. They say, oh, your life just gets worse as you get older. No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Responsibilities can be thrilling. They can be exhilarating. They don't have to take away the essence of who you are.
Hmm. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I relate to that so much. I had a very similar experience through high school, and I think about and college as well, like my undergrad. Grad school has been different. I'm very fortunate. My advisor for my master's and my PhD is incredible. Yeah, and he gives me so much freedom, and like he gives me just enough structure to make sure things get done on certain deadlines, but basically he's let me do whatever I want in terms of what I'm pursuing. And it's that exact same experience of when you're taking history 110 or whatever, right? And you just have to memorize facts to pass the test. I'm not excited about that. I forget it immediately after the test, and whereas I get deeper into the self-driven part of my education and I'm actually excited about it, and I don't even take tests, but I remember everything because you actually care and you try so much harder and it sticks around, and it's so different. It's so different. And I think about the way that schools are. It was I felt it kind of changing like that when I was going through there, where it's like you said, they get rid of all the art stuff. It's purely about how can we program these kids to score well on standardized tests, and then that's all we care about. It kind of stops there. Not everybody, but there are of course great teachers out there, but by and large, it kind of seems like that's the case, which is not a great thing for humanity in general, but also all of those kids' enjoyment as they get older, right? It's
Well,
tough.
it's funny. When I took history, here's just my education in high school was such a battle. I had such a battle with my teachers, with the administration. It was just war. It was war. In history, all the little fill in the blanks to memorize, I knew I was going to forget them 5 minutes later, so I didn't bother to memorize any of it. I turned in the
Yeah.
test and all the fill in the blanks were blank. And I'd write the essay. And since the essay was 60% of the grade or 2/3 of the grade, I'd get a C.
You still passed, yeah.
Right.
That's
So the
awesome.
history teacher's like, what the heck are you doing? You're not trying, you're not doing anything. And I said, give me something that's worth learning
Yeah.
and I will dig in and do it. So senior year, here's the project. We're supposed to do some long essay or long project. And I came in there and I said, I want to study all of the governance systems of all of the Native American tribes and compare them. And he stopped me cold. He refused to let me do it. He said it was way, 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 way too ambitious. Pick just
Uh-huh.
one. He took the guts out of it. That was the
Yeah.
point. It was
Yeah.
to see all the variety of what was here before the Europeans came and disrupted everything. And he
Hmm.
stopped it cold. And then he wonders why I was so turned off.
Right.
I would have spent 4 weeks in the library
Yeah.
putting that project together. And maybe it
Uh-huh.
was too ambitious for what he could imagine, but it wasn't for me. So why don't
Hmm.
teachers just let kids go? Kids know what they want. They
Yeah.
know what they want to read. Before they know how to read, they know what they want to read. But no, you got to read Dick and Jane. It almost made me a non-reader.
Me too.
I would rather be in the woods building dams in the mud on the creek than reading their stupid books. And what saved me was going into my brother's room and stealing Walter Farley.
There you go. There you
And then
go.
they wouldn't let me take out Walter Farley from the school trips to the library because that was a teenage book and I was in
Mm.
third grade or second grade, whatever. So I'd have to walk to the library after school to get the books.
Yeah.
Now go figure, the teachers were obstructing. So how much do they obstruct the kids who really want to take an interest and go for it?
Yeah. 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 I think it's so like I don't know the solution, right? I don't know the answer, but it things clearly need to change on that front, right? People just get stunted, and then you wind up, you know. I even had so I when I graduated high school, I was going to go to college for engineering, and that was kind of the path that we were guided along in high school. And I would have been good at it. I've always been good at math and physics and all this kind of stuff. But my dad does engineering, and I got one semester in, and I was like, I absolutely hate this. So I dropped out, and then had 4 years where I just worked retail and hated it the whole time. But I was like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. When I figure it out, I'll go back, because I want to, you know, I want to pursue whatever I'm doing. I want to pursue it to a high level, right? The highest level that I can. And in those 4 years where I wasn't being challenged, I finally decide what I want to do. I show back up to college, and I'm like, my brain does not work like it used to. And it took a long time to kind of get those gears turning again and be able to work at full capacity. And so I think about people who never go back to school, and they just go through their 20s and their 30s and their 40s, and, you know, and just what people could be capable of if they were allowed to be challenged. It's just hard enough that they can barely get through it, right? And they just kind of keep nudging that upward. Like, what could people be capable of?
They say you're born with billions and billions of neuronal connections in your brain and you eliminate the ones you're not using.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
they don't tell you you can grow them back. It just takes
Yes.
longer practice, repeating.
Yeah.
So when you said it took a while to bring your brain back up to speed, you eliminated what you weren't using, and then
Mm-hmm.
you had to grow it back. You can grow it back all your life. You can grow it back at 80. It just takes
Yeah.
longer at 80, okay? So
Sure.
if you take every 5 years and start something new and you push it until you're good at it, pick up a new musical instrument,
Yeah.
start a new hobby, you will get good at it. You'll continue to develop that focus because
Yes.
you can replace those connections that get erased. But too often they're just allowed to be erased, and it's hard to grow them back. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
know because when I started, I played bagpipes with a competition band and solo for years and years.
Really? Okay.
Oh
That's
yeah.
awesome.
I went all over the country. I went to Canada. I played everywhere. When I decided that, you know, I wanted to learn how to do some drumming for the bands because often we were short a drummer.
Mm-hmm.
I started that in my 60s. Yeah. It was so maddening because I'd work on it and I would just get it so I could get there. I could do it. And then the next day it was gone.
Yeah.
And I'd have to push it again. And the next day it was gone until one day I picked it up and there it was. That's what
Mm-hmm.
it's like growing a connection. You make the connections, but they don't stick.
Yeah.
So practicing over and over and over, you'll get good at anything. Drawing, it takes your first 1,000, then you can draw. But you got to
Mm-hmm.
be willing, you got to have the desire. The desire is what drives talent, not anything else. The desire to practice will get you there.
Yeah.
So they don't teach you your brain is plastic. It can be molded. It can be regrown. It can be revised. You don't have to settle for nothing. You don't
Right.
have to settle for
Exactly.
what they tell you. Oh,
Yeah.
you're born and then you're going to hit your peak and then you're going to get senile and it's over.
Mm-hmm.
Wrong. Not
Absolutely
if you
wrong.
stay connected to what you want to do. But people forget about trying new things. They forget about what made them happy. They forget about what they dropped. They forget about the things that they could have tried. What's wrong with trying them again 40 years later when your kids grow
Yeah.
up?
Absolutely.
What's wrong with
That's
that?
And it's such a fun, like, it can be frustrating in the moment, of course, but overall it's so fun to be a novice at something again, and you feel that, like, that sense of progress in a new thing. I think a lot of people, they don't get that feeling anymore the older they get, you know.
No,
But if
but
you
you
keep
know
trying to
what?
learn new things.
There's wonderful about it's learning new things means you're an idiot.
Yeah.
And when you're a kid, you're an idiot all the time. When you're starting something new and you're young, you're an idiot all the time. Everybody knows more than you do, so it doesn't matter. But you know what? Adults don't like looking stupid.
True.
And so they protect that. And
Yeah.
so I will start something new and I'll be an idiot because it keeps you flexible and it keeps you in your place
Yeah.
and you learn not to be so dang arrogant when watching somebody else struggle for something. So it's really,
Yes.
really humbling to go down and do something you've never done before. And you're definitely the stupid person in the room. By all
Yeah.
means, do be the
Absolutely.
stupid person in the room because you're going to learn how to be a human being that way.
Yeah.
And you'll
I,
be able to admit when you don't know something or when you need help or you need guidance or there's something you don't know and you're trying to push through it. You can't
yeah.
lose that quality. Otherwise you become, I don't want to bring anything you become a real stiff mindset that thinks they know everything and they know less and less as they get older.
Yes. Yeah. Um, okay. So on that note, I have a sort of a selfish question. Speaking as somebody who is the idiot in the room,
No.
in trying to become the trying to embark on my own writing journey, right?
Oh,
I'm
cool.
early on, but I would love to hear you talk about when again, this is me, the idiot in the room, learning from those more experienced. Uh, your I don't even know how to even frame this. So I read The Gallant, I read To Ride Hell's Chasm, right? And the to me, I'm so used to seeing in a story, it's like something unfolds throughout the story, right? It's like these layers coming off, whatever. With those books felt like the opposite to me. It almost felt like it was this slow build rather than an unfold. I don't know the opposite word of that, but that's kind of what it felt like to me. And there was just so much, when I started the book, it's like, you know, I can tell there's going to be depth here. I know there's going to be a lot of depth here, but the further I get through the story, I'm just, my jaw's on the floor the whole back half of the book at how different this is than what it seemed like initially, but it all feels so right and like it was there all along. And I would love to hear you talk about, like, when you sit down to start a project, how much of that do you have sort of planned out in your head or in an outline? How much of it is just self-discovery? Like, how does that work for you?
Well, you can see the actual outline that I sold the book from in Chris Haviland's book, The Synopsis Treasury. It's a book of
Okay,
outlines that authors use to sell their books, the actual proposals for their story. And you can
that's
read
cool.
the actual outline that I sold because there wasn't a word written when I set out to write that. I sold it right off an outline. So what
Okay,
did I want to do? I usually sit down and I roll a few concepts around in a box. And often when I set out to write a story, I will leave one place where I paint myself into a corner. I will place an insoluble problem in front of the characters that's going to hit them about half to 2/3 of the way through. And I'm not going to know how it's going to be solved. And I don't need to spoil the story, but you know exactly the problem I'm talking about.
I do.
I stayed up at night and stayed up at night, placing that question on the platter for the muse, saying, I don't know how I'm going to solve this. And I'm not going to do it the usual way because you can imagine the way that 90% of people would have taken as a solution. Oh, yeah, they're going to do it this way. And I said, no, that one's off the table. The
Yeah,
obvious one's always off the table.
it was not what I expected at all. Yeah.
I didn't have the solution until just about the day I wrote the scene.
Mm,
But this is one thing you need to trust about understanding intuitive creativity. It doesn't work by logic. It doesn't write in the lines that you know. It never does. What you do is you place that insoluble problem, the uncrossable chasm. You know where you want to land on the other side. You don't know how you're going to get there. You don't worry about that. Your subconscious mind is going to put it all together for you. Your intuitive creativity is going to leap that gap. The bigger part of ourselves that we use to create things that we don't have control of, okay? is going to provide that. That is our soul and our spirit speaking. It's going to provide that. So what you do is you keep throwing that dart saying, I want to land here and I don't know how I'm going to get there. And you keep focusing on where you want to be. Intuition is going to fill that in. It's going to give you that solution. You may have to sit on it for a long time. I spent a lot of time cooking in my mind where I wanted to be with Song of the Mysteries, bringing in that finale and sticking that ending where it surprised you all the way up to the very last page.
Mm-hmm.
I placed a lot of darts in that board where I knew this and I knew that, but the leap across the gap, when the intuition supplies it, you're going to go, I know it. I've got it. And you're going to look back and logically, it's going to have made sense all along. But logic did not create that. Intuitive creativity does. And you do it by bouncing off it. You do it by not sitting in place. There's something called open focus, where they had people memorizing numbers on a chalkboard and then turning around and reciting them back. And if they were jumping on a trampoline, they could do it to an insane degree. But sitting still, you can't. When you move your body, your brain opens up. So take that walk. Go lift those weights. Go do that bodybuilding set. Go clean the damn floor with the vacuum. Mm-hmm. Scrub the tiles in the shower. It doesn't matter. It's going to let your brain open up. It's going to free that intuitive. But when you sit in that chair, you've just locked your focus right down to that screen in front of you or that blank page. So it drives my husband nuts because when I'm creating in the studio, I'll draw for a half an hour and then I'll walk around the house. And then I'll come back and I'll see what's wrong with it and I'll draw it again and I'll keep going and say, you'll start with a painting and you'll draw the head and then the whole rest of the painting grows out of that. He can't do that. I don't sketch. That's how I work. I draw the most important thing, which is the emotional face of that character and then the whole rest.
Interesting.
So understanding how intuitive creativity is not logical. It allows in everything. It allows in even the stupid idea. It scribbles on the page and it doesn't care what it looks like. The editor is turned off. And eventually you're going to come up with that perfect solution. And if you don't like the first one, wait for it. The Gallant took me 10 years to write. Not doing it every day, but by writing what I knew and then stopping. And I knew I wanted something really spectacular for the finish of that. Mm-hmm. It took a long time. And it's harder when you're working with a mosaic of a history that's known in that world and what to put where, because you're locked in time. I have thousands and thousands of years, ages and ages of history supporting the Wars of Light and Shadows. It never appears on the page. Yeah. So those shorts took an immense amount of work, but wait for it. You'll know when you get the right one. Not every idea is worth pursuing. So wait until it is. So I would give you that advice right there is understand how your creativity works. And if you're really worried or you're really screwed up or that's not the right moment. Sometimes you got to take care of a sick child or a parent.
Sure.
Sometimes life is too big for taking time aside for your creativity. Other times it's bullshit and it's procrastination. And I've said for years, procrastination is a crisis of value. You've talked yourself into what you're doing is not important enough. So whatever other thing you're distracting yourself with is more important than doing it.
Yeah.
So you've thrown a fog over it because you say it's not worth doing. So what can I do over here to fill my day? Bullshit.
Yeah.
What else could possibly be more important than creating something the world never had? What else could possibly be more important than that?
Yeah.
Taking care of your sick parent, but almost nothing else.
Sure.
So why are we taught to devalue our creativity? And here we are going to hand it to some machines? Are you kidding me?
Right, exactly. Exactly.
I will fight to the death. I will starve.
Yeah.
I will go clean vomit out of toilets before I give my creative power to a machine. It ain't never going to happen.
No, it better. That was I was just talking to Philip about that yesterday actually, and it feels very similar. I think a lot of people who truly value the creative process, like you'll never find anyone in that community who disagrees with that. Right?
Yes, you will, because creativity is hard. How many projects do
Okay,
you ever
fair.
start? I will talk about every painting, every novel, everything I ever built out of wood, every piece of music I ever composed, every single thing I ever did in my life, every single horse that I trained. There's always that part, 10% to one third in, where you go, this is bullshit. There's that
Yeah,
horrible moment where you realize this is so damn hard. It's been a
yeah,
waste of time. Your little devil will come sitting on your shoulder and tell you it just isn't worth it. What you got here is junk. It's not worth finishing. They don't teach you to push past that in school anymore. They give you a 10-minute attention span, and then when it gets really hard, you're done. So yeah, creativity is hard. It is brutally hard because you can't just turn on the spigot and get that intuitive piece every time. Some books write really, really hard and some write really, really easy, and there's no reason for it
yeah,
except that creativity waxes and it wanes. And the trick is being professional enough to have the reader not know the difference.
yeah.
And if
Um,
the reader can't tell the difference, you did your job. But not every
yeah,
project is going to run smooth. So, of course, they're going to turn to AI. Of course, they're going to spin off and listen to social media.
yeah,
Of
yeah.
course, you're going to binge watch that movie or stream
Huh?
a whole season in one day. We
Yeah,
don't have TV.
yeah.
I didn't grow up with the internet.
Uh-huh.
So, learning how to push through that point where it doesn't seem worth it, where your negative ego gets on your shoulder and says, this is bullshit. Nobody's going to like it anyway. Well, you're not the one that gets to judge. I'm sorry, posterity does that. Nobody
Yeah,
knows
yeah,
where your project is going to end up. There are many, many people who labored in obscurity all their lives, and it didn't hit till after they were dead. And there are many that were
yeah,
popular through the roof all their lives, and after they were dead, it blew away like so many leaves in the wind. We don't get to decide. We do not become the arbiter of where our work lands or who gets moved by it. And if one person is moved by it and it saves their life from despair once, what could be less important or more important than that?
yeah.
Being the
How,
inspiration for another human being, you
yeah,
don't get to decide that though. You don't get to
absolutely.
that's God's territory. You don't get
Yeah.
to decide that. You're the one that has to hoe the row, and then after that it's not yours anymore.
Hmm.
So the
And how
hell
do
with the
you,
reviewers and the hell with you just have to let it go.
100%, 100%. And how do you, so I guess you personally or just other people that you've known or other creatives, I think that there's a lot of people, especially a lot of young people I find, my age, younger, et cetera, are sort of like creativity is supposed to just be fun and just flows. But like you're saying, it's very difficult, right? You hit that tipping point and there's so much inertia to push through. How do people continue to push through when it doesn't feel fun in the moment? Like, how do they not just sort of give up?
By understanding your own value and by realizing you are initiating creation. Everywhere around you, nature creates for you. Your body creates for you. It gives you your health. It grows you up. You don't know how all those functions work. Society works around you, but when you're the sole creator, you are the impetus pushing that.
Yeah,
And you're subject to all of the slings and arrows of fortune in the process.
yeah,
And I think as a species, we don't value that enough. We're taught, here's your financial worth. We're taught, here's how many letters are after your name. Here's all the people that love you or don't. But being the sole creator of something, bringing something from nothing into being, what could be a higher thing to reach for? And it doesn't always have to be easy. Yeah, it can be amazingly exhilarating. Sometimes you can sit down and have the most fun you ever had in your life creating something. And other times you're pushing the whole weight of the world out of the way to get the silence to pull that up. So I've
hmm,
always said I balance my creativity with some heavy duty outdoor stuff. I ride horses because when you sit there and you bring an idea that's just a tiny spark of an idea into a whole world and a whole novel, and you bring characters alive and you bring everything to do with a novel alive on the page, and you're selecting the symbols, which are the words which are going to convey that. That's listening to a whisper and making a scream. Going outside and riding 1,000 pounds of animal over a 5-foot jump. Now I'm the one reacting to the scream, right?
Yeah.
I'm reacting every minute to something bigger than me. So it's like flipping that process on end, or going out in the wilderness and it's me against, the physical exertion, or going there and, lifting your weights or what you do,
For sure.
sweating
Yeah.
through it. You're reacting to something greater, and
Yeah.
your brain is switched off for that time. Your brain is, but it's still working. It's working for you in the background.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people don't understand that. They sit in the chair all the day and they think that they don't need to use the rest of their being. They don't need to exercise anything else but their mind. And your mind
Yeah.
works in concert with all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. You are so cool. I just got to stop for a second and just say that this is I've not even looked at the comments in the chat here in a minute because I just wanted to listen to you, but I'm glancing through them a little bit right now. People are very grateful for you talking through all of this. I think everyone is finding this very helpful and very very real and needed.
Look, I'm a stubborn son of a bitch. All right? Because everything was working against me. Yeah. Noisy household, lots of kids, pushing against a society that wanted to mold me one way. You got to realize I was born in the time when women didn't do things. They weren't firefighters and police. I was told, you're a girl, you can't do that. Your options were bank teller, secretary, nurse. Yep. These were the acceptable directions. Then we hit 1972, Roe versus Wade, and birth control. Women started to be able to step out of that. I watched my entire parents' generation taking tranquilizers because they were so miserable, the women, because they were pushed into this. And I'm not saying homemaking isn't a bad thing. If that's for you, that's for you. That's great.
Sure. Yeah.
But the throwing away of the minds, and so I had to fight every inch of the way. I was told I can't write and illustrate at the same time. And I'm going, look at Howard Pyle. Well, you're a woman. You can't do that. You can't live by yourself. You can't. And I'm like, the hell with this. So the fact that I had to push against all of that, against the grain, has made me think very, very deeply about the importance of, why do I want to do this so bad? What happens to me if I give it up? What happens to me if menopause hits in it and I give into that despair when my career's in the toilet because I've been through so many editors that are not even reading my books? They're publishing them without even reading them. I had to decide what was worthwhile. And so, being an introvert, I dug down. I knew myself. So when society tried to shove me in a direction that was going to make me unhappy, I got miserable enough to say, this isn't right. Your happiness compass is accurate all the time. But we're told that comes second. So where did I get all this? It was because I had to dig deep in myself to keep my compass straight, or just plain die of despair. Yeah. Literally just plain give it up and die of despair. And I've seen many of my peers crash and burn. Many of my peers succumb to depression, lose their careers and not fight for them hard enough. Not persist even though everybody's not reading your stuff and you're not going to be the next famous thing, or you're not even going to have a contract sometimes. Who cares? Do it anyway. Do it anyway. Because the opportunity will come and you won't be prepared if you don't. And you'd have sold yourself down the river of being unhappy. If you do it anyway, you might be miserable, but at least you're doing it anyway. Right?
Yeah.
So I had to dig deep because I didn't do the conventional thing. I didn't get married until I was 38 because I wasn't going to settle for less. And I saw a lot of my friends do that and be miserable. And I said, this isn't going to happen to me. Not happening. So I've had to dig deep and I've had to find the answers. And if I can share that, if that helps somebody else out of a pit that they didn't need to fall into, I am more than grateful.
Yeah. Well, I think I speak for everybody watching this that we're all very, very grateful that you share your experience. I think, we learn the most poignant lessons from our own life experience, right? But if we can learn from some other people's experiences, that helps to lessen the amount of hardship that we have to go through sometimes. So, yeah, I'm just this is this is just, I was expecting this to be an amazing conversation, but this is levels beyond anything that I could have hoped for. That this is so valuable, so amazing. Thank you.
If you dig into the human condition, you will find not one, but a million stories where the human spirit triumphed.
Yeah.
The sports team that shouldn't have made the national championship, the kid who should have had every strike against him succeeding anyway. There are a million stories like that, and not even all of them have been told. So why do we erase those from our existence? And that's when I got really against the wall. That's the kind of stuff I fed myself. It was like, if those people had given up, they wouldn't have succeeded. They wouldn't have won. They wouldn't have squeezed the last drop out of life. And if you die trying, how did you lose anything? Right?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. That's
crash and burn before giving up.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's a sentiment that, and again, I've only read 2 of your books, but like that comes through even there. I think about, like Mikhail, for example, right? Just like all the stuff that he goes through, but even as simple as that idea of just not giving up and just keep, doing what he knows is right. I think that's one of the, again, we're keeping the spoiler free, but just that's one of the things I think you explore really well in To Ride Hell's Chasm, is that idea of what do you feel is right versus what you're told is right, or what your duty is, or the clash of those things, and his spirit persevering it just leaps off the page, right? And it just reminds me of that.
It's the reverberation of Outward Bound at 17 years old. I don't know if you're familiar with the history of the Outward Bound program.
Not really. I've heard you talk about it before.
The Outward Bound program was developed after World War II. And it was because naval people were shipwrecked. And what they discovered floating in their little life rafts was the guys who were 20 were dying, and the guys who were in their 40s were surviving. And they said, what is wrong with this picture? And what they came up with was the guys who were in their 20s had never hit their limit. They'd never been to rock bottom. They had never been stressed hard enough to realize what was really in the depths. And the guys in their 40s had, so they knew not to quit. So they developed Outward Bound as a 28-day program to break all of your barriers, to hit rock bottom not once but repeatedly, and realize that there's a whole reservoir under there that's so much more than what you think is there. Your limits are elastic.
Yes.
And I did that at 17 years old. And it eliminated a lot of the bullshit that high school had tried to feed me sideways.
Yeah.
And I realized I can do anything. My limits are elastic. I can surpass those limits again and again, because there's always more. There is always more that you can reach for. And we don't teach people to survive hardship in that way. All we do is tell them, here's your limit, quit.
Yeah.
You didn't pass that standardized test, so you didn't learn anything. Well, you didn't learn anything to start with, right? So that's what I put into that manuscript, was here's this experienced warrior who's had to push past that limit many times, and an untried person who has never experienced that. So he can see what she's going to face.
Yeah.
So that sense of eliminating bullshit, if you want to learn what's important in your life, get on a 40-foot yacht and go off the coast of nowhere, 1,500, 2,000 miles, and you're a little speck on this great big ocean. And now look at what you think about. All the crap you worried about, most of your time, most of your day falls away because it's not important. The few things that are really important are going to come to the surface.
Yeah.
And they're often not the things you think they are. So I think it's really important now and again to reset, to pull yourself out of your little box of what you think is your little treadmill, put yourself in a situation where what you do matters, because the force is against that little sailboat and you out there all by 4-man crew. Whatever goes wrong, it's up to you. You're done if you can't solve it.
Mm-hmm.
It puts everything in perspective. And we live in such a protected society. There's safety warnings all over our
Yeah.
everything. You can't go
Mm-hmm.
out in a canoe without a life jacket, because God
Yeah.
forbid. See what I'm saying? They made our toys safe. They've made everything so safe that the risk is not something people are taught to face at all. They're
Yeah.
not taught to be self-reliant. They're not taught to think. So they don't project what happens if I do this dumb thing and it hits me in the face,
Mm-hmm.
because we've been put in cotton wool.
Yeah.
So stepping out of that produced a lot of the things that created Hell's Chasm.
Yeah.
Our little
Absolutely.
closed society that can't solve this problem. And are we going to recognize the guy with the solution? And honestly, when I sat down to write, I didn't know that I was going to be also including racism.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea that character was going to be who he was. He walked
Yeah.
onto the page full blown. I go, oh my gosh. I called my editor and I said, can you handle this? And to their credit, at that time, they said yes. But I realized it was a culmination because I had spent lots of my life working with people or around people that didn't come from my background and seeing what they faced. And so that all
Yeah.
just poured into the book and it made it more of what it was.
Yeah. And it was beautifully handled. I mean, like from the perspective of a straight white male, like to what extent I can say that it was handled really well from my experience, right? But I think it really was. And wow, I mean, there's so much here. Like I can really relate to what you're saying too about the, you know, being out on the boat and, you know, all the unimportant things fall away. And like, that's why we brought up that I do bodybuilding, right? That's why I like it. It's this very difficult thing. Like you're literally starving yourself to death, you know, slowly over 6 or 7 months, and you're forcing yourself to do all this physical activity, and, you know, you can't eat anything, and, you know, whatever. And it's so difficult. It's so overwhelming. But it's a truly transcendent experience. If you're there, if you take the time to reflect and realize it is. And for me, what I've really gotten from it is, one, I can do really hard things. That's a big lesson that I've learned. But I think two, in this time that I've done it, the biggest lesson that I got was like in your example, things fell away. My brain normally is going 100 miles an hour. I'm thinking about, oh, I got to do this for the lab. We have data collection tomorrow, so I got to do this right now. I have to respond to this client. I have to do this. But when I'm doing this competition prep for bodybuilding, my brain, it strips away all these things that don't matter as much, and I can actually have the space to take a second and realize what actually matters the most, which, you know, for me is finally realizing in this, I'm ashamed to admit this, but finally realizing the most important thing is not my career. It is spending time with my girlfriend and with my friends and actually connecting with another human being, because those are the experiences and the memories that we're going to have forever. And that, like that, starting that skill and that lesson has made me eternally grateful to the difficulty that is bodybuilding, right? And I think that, you know, I see that happen in these characters in your books and you know, the experiences that you're talking about. And it's such a beautiful thing, but it's really hard. It's hard to do. It's scary to do, right? So
You had to
I
have a
can see it,
backbone.
but
You had to grow a
yeah,
backbone so
it's
that you're
true.
not doing what all your friends are doing.
Yeah.
You had to not eat what they were eating. You had to not do what they were doing. You had to not live their schedule. You had to adhere to a discipline that took you in a different direction, that alienated you
Yeah.
from
True.
what the other people were around you. And that enabled you to sort what was important and what was truly important to spend time on. But if you're always conforming to what the crowd is doing, you never grow that ability
Yeah.
to cut your own course. And so that discipline is going to stand you in very good stead when you write. It's
Yeah.
going to help
I
you a
hope so.
lot. Check out the tips for aspiring writers on my website. It mentions some books that are like no other books, but you should read them, could read them, because it will give you a view into a professional take that's delivered in a way that I found other books on writing don't. One of
Yeah.
them is Techniques on the Selling Writer by Dwight Swain. I'd have been 10 years sooner if I'd had my hands on that. And the other one is Story by McKee, which is for
Okay.
film script writers, but it explains the function of how each scene has to surprise, how each arc of the story has to develop something that's not predictable, and you don't have the magic until you have that.
Mm.
And it examines, are you writing an extroverted story? Is it a survival story? Are you writing an introverted story, which is emotional survival? Or are you writing an art film, which is different than both? And it enables you to know, or are you doing a blend of all three?
Yeah.
So you know what you're doing when you're putting those words on the page. So that would help you as a writer. And that, and read books. Read
Yeah.
books and read books before. I mean, in a way, I was fortunate because when I was brought up, I had the library and the paperback fiction wasn't a big deal then. People didn't have the money for that kind of thing. We went to the library. News services had not cut back their language to third grade English. There was literally a
Mm.
moment where they literally took the major magazines and cut them back to third grade English because they wanted to reach a wider audience. So read the older books, read Thomas Costain, read Dorothy Dunnett, read some of these books that came out before popular fiction whittled down the juice from language,
Mm.
and see how they constructed their stories. Now, I'm not talking step back into the 1800s when everything was very, very mannered. I'm talking Mary Stuart. I'm talking, the hardback publications that came from the 50s, 60s, 40s. Read some of those books. People are reading them now. Lonesome Dove. They're reading
Yeah.
Shogun. They're reading. I find you booktubers are kind of turning back the clock a little bit and looking
Hmm.
for that depth that has been stripped away from so
Yeah.
much modern popular fiction that it's almost sad because it's so stripped down. The meat's missing.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I see what you mean for sure. I'm so glad that you brought all this up too, because that's your your style is so I don't even know the right word. I mean, it's so unique. It's so lush. It's so uh, Philip used the word stately that I think was very apt. That did you develop that style through, of course, practice, but through like studying, or was that a very natural thing for you, or how did that kind of come about?
I just read so many books, and it's knowing the right word for the right moment, for the right
Hmm.
place, for the right atmosphere. And also, I'm a very visual thinker, and I also was a musician, so I hear it and I see it and I
Yeah.
experience it. And I wanted to bring to the page some of the actual lived hands-on experience of things I've actually done. I
Yeah.
want you to feel what it's like to be in an offshore boat in a big bad storm. When you get to Destiny's Conflict, you will go there. I want
Okay.
you to live being around a horse and see the difference in their personalities. I want to bring that armchair reading experience, a taste of the reality of what it was like to do that.
Yeah.
And then from there, sometimes I'll get a note from a reader saying, well, I went out and tried this because I read it there. Or I want that feeling of hanging on an ice cliff, doing rock climbing or doing, where you're on a rope or you're. So finding just the right word, the right atmosphere, the right blend to bring it together. And I developed my own voice and I refused to give it up.
Yeah.
It's been the bane of my writing career because people
Sure.
complain that it's too original, but also it delivers an experience. It doesn't deliver some books you read them and the word is so thin you have to fill out the rest and all you get is another reflection of yourself.
Mm.
My books don't do that. They are more controlling. They're going to take over your
Yes.
mind and you have to let go of yourself to read one of my books. And many people are totally terrified and they won't, or they're stubborn and they won't, or they just don't want to give up control.
Uh-huh.
They got to control the experience. My books aren't going to allow that. The book is going to control your experience and you're going to walk out of it having lived it. So if you don't want to
Yeah.
have your emotional frame of mind ripped away and replaced by what my characters are going through, if you don't want to come away from it having a life experience you never expected, you aren't going to work with my books at all. If you insist
Yeah.
on you want to take the wheel and be the character, my character's going to drive you. So it takes a
Yeah.
secure person, a secure reader to be able to let go and allow that book to kick their ass.
Yeah. I mean, it'll
And
do
I
that,
demand
you
it.
know?
I demand it. If you're going to read my books, you are going to experience them because that's what I put on the page.
Yeah.
Bar
Yeah.
none, no holes barred, take no prisoners. You are going to give up yourself to walk through one of my books. And I think that is some of the resistance. Some of it comes from I don't want to encounter something I never encountered before. It terrifies people. I revel in it. Give me a book that does that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I'm glad that I have read a fair amount of books before I got into yours, right? Because I think I would have bounced off of it if I would have found it too early, you know?
I'm not
Um,
writing for young people who are
no.
still in their teens or even early 20s without experience. I'm writing for someone who wants an adult view.
Yes.
This is not teen fulfillment, wish fulfillment. And I'm not disparaging those books. Let me tell you, there's days when I feel so miserable. I want fluff. I don't want to be ripped out of my own head. I want
Yeah.
something that's going to be comfortable and be a warm blanket. But my books are going to deliver a great deal. They're going to break your warm blanket and shred it and hand you something. And it's not going to be nihilistic. It's not going to tell you that human beings have no free will. It's not going to
Mhm.
give you a message that hope doesn't matter. To me, giving up hope is the great evil in the world. That's when all of the
Mm.
bad things come in, is when people give up the shining thing that makes us reach for something that matters. And
Yeah.
when we give that up, when we become the cynic, we've just talked ourselves out of fighting back. So I'm
Yes.
always going to write about characters who fight. I am not going to write this one that says, we're headed for a dystopia and there's nothing we can do but shine in the dystopia. No, I'm more of Tolkien's camp saying there's a lot of good in the world and it's our job to fight for it. Because
Yeah.
the minute you let that go, what do you become? You just joined the dark side.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have.
I love
You've
that.
talked yourself out of that there's anything better.
Hmm.
And there have been people in history who've lived through things that are a great deal worse than anything we face right now.
Oh yeah,
And
absolutely.
people running around saying, oh, I'm too tired. I just can't. Well,
Yeah.
kick your ass and get up out of bed. And so I write books that try to impart that flavor of you don't quit. You're
Yeah.
your own worst enemy when you give it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, wow. And even in the limited amount that I have read of your work, like that is so strongly there, even just in Hell's Chasm, right? It's um, and I love everything that you said about the hope and about all of that. That's a big reason why I like Malazan so much.
Yeah,
It is very dark. It's very heavy. There's
it
so much
is.
going
It
on, but
is.
there's that
He's doing the
compassion is
catharsis, but
everything.
he's also waking the compassion in the
Yes.
catharsis. And that's why when people say, oh, well, you read Malazan and the next thing to read is Baker, I disagree because the
Yeah.
compassion is everything that's real in Malazan.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I'm one, if you want to read a book about nihilism, run away from mine because I'm not going to do that.
Hmm.
To me, that's the
Yeah.
great surrender. And that's when all the bad creeps in.
Sure.
Apathy
Yeah.
is what opens the gates to everything that's ugly. So I'm not going to
Yeah.
write apathetic books and I'm not going to write apathetic characters and I'm not going to tell people this is the message that there's no point to it.
Hmm. Yeah. I
You
think.
look outside there and you look at the honeybees and you look at all the things. I mean, tell a tree there's no point to it, right? The whole
Right.
universe is against that
Uh huh.
statement right there.
It
And you
is.
look out there and there's just so much variety and so much. I mean, you give a bare patch of earth and life is going to take it over. So what do people do? Painting themselves into a corner saying nihilism is the thing.
Yeah.
I don't agree.
Yeah, I don't either. I do want to read Baker. I think it's I want to think about those things. I want to hear the arguments. I think it's really interesting. But ultimately, at my core, I I
Didn't
choose to
tell
believe.
people what to
You
read or
know,
not to read. I said these two things
for
don't belong
sure.
in the same
Yeah, yeah,
box.
yeah.
And so it
Absolutely,
irritates me when I see that put in the same box because
sure.
I see them actually at opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yes, people like to say Malazan is grimdark, and I'm like, did you read Malazan? It's
It
I
is.
don't.
It's incredibly dark.
It's
It's
very dark.
incredibly dark. But there's a certain transcendent thread through that whole thing saying no matter
Yeah,
how dark it gets, there is an understanding on the other side of that dark that's going to show you the flip side of what that is. You
yeah,
know, he paints things that are so grim and you go, oh, this is evil until you realize that you don't have the point of view to understand
yeah.
what it is you're seeing. And that
Uh-huh.
is the transcendent step that is stepping past. And that's one thing you'll see independently and differently presented, but in light and shadow, differently presented. But that sense of just because you see the surface of a thing doesn't mean you know a thing.
Yeah.
And Malazan does a great job of keeping that revolving door flipping over.
Hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
And it shows you time and again that when you think you have a grasp of a situation, you don't. And there's something bigger behind it, something that you have to dig deeper to understand it. But when you do, you realize the immense something else that created that situation. And that's one thing that book at the opposite end of the spectrum, the nihilistic book, doesn't give you.
Mm.
Doesn't give you. If you read The Magicians, it doesn't give you that. Lev Grossman doesn't give you that. It gives you something
Sure.
else.
Sure.
So I'm not saying that those books are bad or wrong or I won't ever read them or
Sure.
they're no, it's a different perspective, but it's a perspective that I rebel against and have all my life because every time somebody tried to push me into that corner, I just couldn't buy it. I'm not going to buy the lie that we're live in this magnificent universe that can create more stars than we can possibly count and little us doesn't matter.
Right.
I won't buy that lie. I just won't. Every single piece of evidence out there says it's a lie.
Yeah.
Or why bother having a universe that, everybody isn't just a wind up toy and goes down the same path? We're given our individuality for a very sacred reason.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. It's there. There's a movie called Prometheus that's in like the Alien
Yeah, I saw it.
universe.
Sure.
Yeah. There's the line from, I don't remember her name, but the character that is deeply religious, but they're going out to find these, these aliens that they believe may have played a part in creating humanity, right? Literally looking for evidence going against her God. And she's still religious, and she says it's what I choose to believe.
Right.
And that line has always stuck with me so strongly, and I think it sort of echoes with what you're saying there. It's like there's just, it's not all about the evidence that we have, which is incomplete anyway. By the way, science is not as perfect as people think. But at the end of the day, I think sometimes you just have that feeling in your heart and your soul of what you choose to believe.
Well, isn't that what fantasy is? It's exploring the mythscape of what we choose to believe and what the
Yeah.
meaning of it is. But one thing that rattled my cage very, very hard when I was studying science and found things that they didn't, oh, we can't write a paper about that. And I'm going, it's right in front of your eyes. We can't write a
Yeah.
paper about that. Going to the other side of the world and living with other cultures and seeing points of view that were so alien to white Western civilization and
Hmm.
seeing the validity of some of the stuff those people were doing and
Yeah.
what they believed. Beliefs actually imprison us. They close the
Yes.
door to anything that's outside, and your mind is a selective little dog. It will retrieve what you tell it to retrieve. And when you have a belief, it's going to retrieve everything that supports that belief.
Hmm.
Step outside of that, and your jaw hits the floor, and you go, well, that doesn't fit that belief. Well, maybe your belief is a little too narrow.
Hmm.
So I see life as a sequence of breaking down beliefs. Now, I don't say believe nothing. You have to start where you are. But if you stop
Yeah.
challenging the belief, blind faith, blind faith is just you're a tool to whatever comes along and fills that gap.
Sure.
And that's a major theme of Light and Shadows. Huge.
Ooh,
Your
okay.
belief makes you a tool of something else that's going to use that. And when you stop questioning it, now you're a compliant tool.
Yeah.
Its beliefs are powerfully imprisoning, and something's going to come along that's going to use that. So a mass belief of any kind is insane because
Yeah.
it's stopped looking for something bigger.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's
And when you say for the moment I'm going to suspend my belief, we do it all the time reading fantasy, okay? And the people who
mhm.
are very rigid in their beliefs don't think fantasy is a good thing. They'll tell you it's evil.
Yeah.
All these gaming things, oh my God, it's evil. It's not. They're not willing to suspend their belief even for 5 seconds. But if
Mhm.
you do, and you step into another culture that doesn't share those beliefs, let me tell you, you're going to see wonders.
Absolutely. Dude, my girlfriend she has spent a lot of time exploring different ideologies, and she lived in China for a while. She thought about moving there to pursue like traditional Chinese medicine, and so she has exposed me to a lot of different things, a lot of spiritual things, and it's so eye opening. Just seeing, just how many different things are out there, and like you're saying, it really starts to crumble a lot of those things that you took for granted or just took as rock solid truth, and it's like, well, that's from your perspective, your experience. Maybe it felt true, but from their perspective and their experience, the stuff
Totally
that they
not.
feel is true.
It's totally not. So, yeah, what is a belief except something rigid that you chose to classify
Yeah,
and accept that this is true?
yeah,
What is truth? It's defined by your beliefs because your brain is going to give you more of the same. So,
yeah.
fantasy is one way to make it elastic
Hmm.
and toss some stuff out. And there again, back to Hell's Chasm, a very closed society that didn't experience too much outside, couldn't wrap its head around the threat that was coming,
Uh huh.
couldn't accept what was in front of them, couldn't accept the solutions that were in front of them.
No.
And yet, the solution and the way that book worked out wouldn't have worked without the smallest people involved. It took
Absolutely not.
everyone. Community
It
still
did.
mattered.
Yeah.
It still mattered. So we're not islands. But if
Hmm.
we don't flex and exercise and take a sledgehammer to our beliefs, if we don't question, if we take what we're told as a given, we end up with the internet where everybody's attacking each other and
Right.
nobody wants to have a conversation about anything.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I often say it's taken our subconscious beliefs and just built walls with them because the internet didn't start that way and it was liberating to begin with.
Yeah, and it still is in a lot of ways. It's not
It
all bad
can
things by
be,
any
it
means.
can
I
be,
get to
but
do that. I get to talk to you. That's
yeah,
amazing, right?
yeah, you do.
Um, but yeah, there certainly are. There
Lots of little
certainly
people
are.
with little sledgehammers that want to go and
Uh
troll
huh.
and break everything up. So,
Yeah.
but I don't listen to that and I don't deal with that because that's not what
Yeah.
I'm about. It's like I don't like to engage with things that are silly. I'll
Mm-hmm.
ignore them because then they die.
For sure.
Ignoring is the
Absolutely.
most powerful tool you have.
It is
Not
indeed.
arguing, not speaking out, not just walk away. Shunning
Yeah.
works.
It does. It does.
But in the booktube community, luckily, we have people who are willing to think outside the box, and
Yeah.
some of the most human beings are reading books right now, and it's very exciting
It is exciting.
because we're
Some.
connecting.
Exactly right, and that's the most beautiful thing about all this is connecting to so many people. And I think on a similar note, I've done a horrible. I'm so sorry, everyone who's in the chat. I've done such a horrible job of keeping an eye on this. I've been so like locked in, but I do want to, because there's a super chat. I do want to make sure I get to this. Is on that note of that connection in the community and how we're all so excited about your books right now. And can you share with us, sort of what you're working on, what you're thinking about in the future, that sort of thing, in terms of more stories?
I am definitely writing. I got a giant folder of ideas that's never been tapped. I have a book out on submission right now. It's 5 chapters written in completely polished prose with a fairly firm outline, with the areas that aren't filled in where I want them not to be filled in.
Mhm.
It is under submission. I don't know where it's going to land. HarperCollins declined. It's not a romantasy. Definitely not.
How dare you?
It's a nautical fantasy. It takes place on about a 75-foot schooner, similar to what I crewed on. If you want to look up the boat
Okay.
that I'm styling it after, look up Topsail Schooner Wolf.
Okay.
And they run couriers, they run messages, so they take a lot of risk and they run afoul of some rather big things. And it's found
Okay.
family, and it's broken people coming together that crew this boat. They've all got pasts, they've all got baggage, much like the Schooner Wolf, because the captain and his wife that sail that boat would take on broken people and literally mended lives. And they sailed a lot of humanitarian to the Bahamas after hurricanes, and they sailed to Haiti after hurricanes because they had shallower draft. They could bring supply in where many of the bigger operations could not. So if you liked Firefly, you might enjoy this because it's sort of that
That's
feel,
cool.
but it's definitely real life sailing. And it's definitely going to have some edges. It'll have a build similar to Hell's Chasm, and
Okay.
not a lot of plot armor.
Okay.
So, and it's got a good solid thread of launch. So if you're not ready for a few things that aren't terribly politically correct or whatever, I'm having fun with this one, but it will
I
have
love
some
it.
deeper themes in it. The deeper themes are there. So that's what's out there, and it's a standalone for the moment. But if it finds a home, and I could definitely do 2 sequels in an episodic fashion. So that's
Okay.
what I'm playing with at the moment. And then at home, while I'm waiting for that to find a home, if it will, if it won't, I will publish it myself. I'm
Awesome.
writing more short fiction connected to the bigger series to help keep that ticking, because at this point it's going to be backlist at the
Mm.
publisher, and I need to keep putting out new works to keep that going. So most of these are going to be historical periods where people have tended to make an assumption that's way oversimplifying, and I'm going, no, this isn't how simple that worked out.
Okay.
The one in progress right now is the sequel to The Gallant,
Awesome. Yeah.
and ideally I'll do 3 of them and then package them as one book.
Nice.
So
Okay.
this one will be set 100 years further into the future than the one that I wrote, but it's still 500 years in the past.
Hmm.
Now, I could do far future in the same universe, but I'm hesitant to do that because too many people haven't finished the series yet, and I'm afraid it would be a dead end. You
Mm.
know, I've got Black
Yeah, I
Bargain,
see.
which I recommend you read after Storm Fortress, and hardly anyone has read it because they got to read Storm Fortress
Oh,
first.
sure. Yeah.
So that's what I'm playing with. And I might decide to do a thriller because I have so much search and rescue background. I might decide. So there's any of a dozen ways I could go, but I'm sort of
Yeah.
relaxing and having fun. This book's out on submission. I hope it finds a home. Working on stuff, great guns that will go up on the website, or so there's plenty going on. I'm not going to quit writing. Rest assured,
Beautiful.
unless a horse kicks my head in tomorrow and I get
I hope
brain
not.
damage, I
I
am
hope
not going to
not.
quit writing. Oh, of course not. Of course not.
Well, that's amazing to hear. And if there's any like, if there's a company, a publisher that a large group of booktubers could send emails to pressure them a little bit to get them to accept something, we would be more than happy to do so. So
Well, I handpicked an editor or two that I thought would fit, and we just got to see what happens. These things don't happen overnight or quickly because they do
hmm.
acquisition meetings and they draw up a profit and loss statement. What readers can do is badger for an audiobook and pick up
Okay.
the books that are out there, because those P&L statements are going to look at how the sales record is going, and they can see who's buying books and who's not. They can
Hmm.
see what's moving and what isn't. And I'm kind of working against the grain because I didn't have a gigantic publicity campaign. What was done was only pretty much UK based because Harper
Mm.
Voyager only pushed this series finish in the UK. And it's a
Yeah.
worldwide release. So you're already doing it. You're already
Okay.
doing it. So
Okay.
they'll be looking
Awesome.
at the numbers of Song of the Mysteries. And with a new read along kicking off with a book every month, that those numbers will take 2 years to click through.
Yeah.
And the
True.
submission is out now. So all I can say is, just do what your heart tells you to do. Read the books, talk about them, have fun with them, because that's going to be the most solid report back is the buzz that's going on YouTube. I'm sure it's noticed. I'm
Yeah.
sure when a big channel picks up a book and there's a big, huge spike, it's
Hmm.
noticed. I'm sure
Yeah.
when multiple booktubers start talking about these books, it's going to create notice.
Yeah.
So you have a lot more power than you give yourselves credit for. Look what happened to, what was that book? This is How You Lose the Time War?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
One guy picked that book up
Yeah.
and it just started a fire and
Yeah.
that thing just exploded. The Martian started out self-published. I read that when it was
That's
still
right.
self-published.
Yeah.
And then it got a major film deal and it's got because lots of people on Goodreads were reading it and talking about it and
Yeah.
people were buying it. So all I can say is I get whispers of what could happen. There's possible interest, but kicking it over that line, it's a
Hmm.
business, it's not a charity.
Right.
And fortunately there are ways to get around this and produce a book other than just going through the main gate with a publisher.
Sure.
I'd like to sign another contract simply because a lot of my readers are in South Africa and New Zealand and Australia, and doing a self pub and reaching all those areas with paper books is very hard.
Sure. Makes sense.
So, in order to satisfy my readership, I may want to have a wider platform.
Sure.
But kicking that ball over the line, geez, I have no idea right now because
Yeah.
the major push, I'm looking at what's coming out on the books just bought on the locus list, and there's so many brand new writers doing things that are so different than the kind
Hmm.
of thing that I like to do. So is
Yeah.
there a market for it? We'll find out.
We'll
But I
find out. But
guarantee
we're
you, market or not, it's not going to stop me.
Yeah. I have no doubt. I have no doubt. But we're all going to try our best to make sure that market's as big as it can possibly be.
Well,
Of
thank you. It makes me happy
course.
to hear that because writing in the dark, as any writer will tell you, is difficult. It's a lot more fun when you have people you can talk about it with.
I'm
And
sure.
Jake, I'm looking forward to seeing what you do in the future. If you're going to pick up the pen and go
Thank
at
you.
it,
Yeah.
by all means, let me know
Yeah. I
because I will help in any way I can.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much. I have a start. I crossed 10,000 words the other day. So we have a little baby start. We got a ways to go, but I'm
Cool.
excited. It's super fun. So much fun. It feels like I'm just playing in a sandbox, but
It is. It is.
we'll
It can
see.
be incredibly fun.
Yeah.
Incredibly fun. So stay at it because you're your own worst enemy. The only person who can
Yeah.
make you quit is you.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
Um, wow. Well,
yeah.
maybe this is a quick note to end on is just asking. I know that actually might have been before we started recording, was talking about the ICFA conference, but
Yeah.
that's in March in Orlando. But is there any other public appearances? Because a lot of people want to meet you now. I see it, in the
Well,
chat. I hear the chatter.
for a long time there, Don and I will both go, but usually it takes an invitation to get there because
Hmm.
we're holding down a pretty good sized property here, and I'm living, frankly, carefully because I had to finish that series on a shoestring.
Yeah, yeah.
So you want me to make an appearance at one of these conventions, get the convention to step up because we have never turned anyone down yet. We were at
Okay.
Orcon last year. So we definitely go out when we're asked to go.
Awesome.
I'd like to say, oh, I can just hop on a plane and go to some of these. Maybe we'll make it to LA Worldcon. I'd hoped we'd make it to Glasgow, but it just wasn't possible.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, but right at the
Okay.
moment, we definitely go to the International Conference on the Fantastic in Orlando. We will be there for at least one, maybe 2 nights, 2 days, maybe three. And that
Awesome.
takes place in March, and that's on the map. That's the only thing on
Good.
the map, but that doesn't mean something isn't going to jump on
Yeah.
given time.
All right. Well, you heard it here, folks. That means that we need to be on these different convention people to make sure that an invitation gets sent out. and maybe we could crowdfund something, maybe even too, because I know a lot of
That's yeah.
people. A lot of people on BookTuber are really trying to make it out to Seattle for Worldcon here next year,
Oh, that
and
Seattle
that'd be
throws a
cool.
good con. Yeah, we've been to Northwest Con. I think I've been twice as artist guest of honor. Don went once as artist guest of honor. They throw a really, really good con.
Awesome.
How can you miss anyway going to Seattle? They got Archie McPhee's. If you've never heard of Archie McPhee's, you look it up. It's a ton of fun. But
Okay, yeah, I
anyway,
don't know what
yeah,
that is.
the thing about that one is it's unlikely we would go on our own dime because getting from Florida to there is an
Oh,
insane flight.
yeah, you don't
We'd
have to
need
tell
help to
me.
do it.
Yeah,
We'd need help to do it.
yeah, it's a
LA
lot.
is a little easier because we can probably get a direct flight from Orlando
Yeah,
or
yeah,
from Tampa. But yeah, it's tempting because they throw a good con out there. Seattle is
yeah.
great. It's a wonderful
Be
group of
fun.
people. All those
Be super fun.
Coast cons are super fun. They're
Yeah,
super
I'm sure.
fun.
I've never been to one out there. I think the furthest west I've ever been is Denver, I think.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I'm not nearly as well traveled as you are, but we're trying. We're trying. It's like you're saying. It's everything costs so much. Like traveling is flights and any need a place to sleep. Even the cheap places are getting more and more expensive as time goes on. So
That and we've got older animals and they require serious care when
oh,
we're
for
gone.
sure.
So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So it's a bit of an ordeal, but we love to go. We love to meet people. We've never said no to a convention that brought us in yet. So we're certainly capable and able to travel.
Yeah.
We'd like to get out more. This year we got hit by Hurricane
It was a
Milton.
brutal,
Oh,
yeah, brutal
it tore
hurricane
the place
season.
up, and we didn't lose anything important like the house. The
Good.
coast. It ripped the coast up bad, but we had a
Hmm.
lot of cleanup. We're still plowing through the cleanup on that
Wow.
one.
Wow. Yeah.
And we didn't even lose any of our great oaks or any of that. Our neighbors
Okay.
did. I mean, the damage that's just spit over our fence is shocking. But
Jeez. Yeah.
when you have old fences and they got to be repaired because there's a horse in there, you
Yeah.
don't exactly have a
True.
lot of choice.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of clear up after that convention. I mean, after that. So thank goodness we
Mhm.
didn't go to Glasgow because we would have been
Oh
coming home
man.
to a mess. Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be a nightmare. All right, Janny. Thank you. I cannot thank you enough for this. This has been such an amazing conversation. That word doesn't even do justice. I'm so grateful to have had this opportunity and for how much you have welcomed me into like this greater reading, whatever we want to call this community, fantasy community. I don't know, but you've been so amazing, and I told you at the beginning of this, I've come to respect you greatly, and that's only grown a lot in the last hour and a half or whatever this has been. So
Oh,
thank
it's
you
been
so
fun.
much.
It's been mind blowing. It's been mind blowing to be invited. One of the things I love about the booktube community is we don't draw lines and fences, not between generations, not between gender, not between anything.
Yeah,
People are people, and it's one of the few places in the world that isn't fighting with each other, and I just love it. So I was very, very honored. I've met some of the most tremendous people, young, old, in the middle, every kind of, and from all over the world. So it helps me not feel so isolated because we're not exactly living in the most intellectually based community here.
that's so funny.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
but it's a beautiful property and the cost of living was low, so it was something we could handle.
yeah.
So I really value the connections that we get to make. So I appreciate it. I was so excited when you gave me the invitation. It's out of the world. It lifted my mood for the week because I knew it was going to be fun.
That's amazing. I'm so glad. That's amazing to hear. It just certainly did the same for me when you said yes. I was hoping you would say yes, but you never know for sure. So
Oh, I'm really known for going, oh no, I'm not going to do that. If it's golf, flat no. If it's going to do some kind of dumb dancing, flat no. If
yeah,
it's
same.
let's go to a fashion show, probably flat no. I don't own anything but jeans and business clothes that
Yeah,
are out of the closet with the moss. So, I'm not known for saying no to experiences that are going to be worthwhile. And I can't
yeah.
imagine a better way to spend a Sunday afternoon. So thank you. And thank you all for coming to listen.
Yes, thank you for hanging out with us. If you're watching this on the replay, thank you for watching the replay. I'm gonna go back and watch the replay because I want to I want to hear all this again. Yeah, this has just been great, and yeah, thank you for watching. We will see you in the next one.
Thank you so much.
All right, go ahead.